All right, this is our hinge prop. Now hinges have to either be cut or pulled. Now typically in an outward opening door setting, you're pulling a door hinge is much harder than cutting it. But it is definitely a viable option, especially if your saw goes down or if you're waiting for the truck company to get there. You might be able to get 1 or 2 hinges pulled out before they get there. So I want to show you how to mount our hinges to our hinge prop. It's very simple. They use the exact same dowels as we use in our doors, a 3/4 inch hardwood dowel, and they basically just fit through these holes, and you can see this one's been loaded already. So you have the 2 dowels in place, and those 2 dowels just slide in, and they hold the hinge, and these are just our heavy duty hinges that we make for the prop. It just holds the hinge in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and load this one real quick. You see the bottom one's already loaded also, and then I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate pulling them. Again, you don't need to have a lot of dowels showing. As long as the dowels are holding that in place, you can save some money by not just tearing up dowels and cutting up big sections of them. All right, so anytime we go after pulling hinges, the thing we have to remember is that the hardest hinge is always gonna be the top one. We have the least amount of leverage physically against the top hinge. So I'm gonna demonstrate going through an entire evolution here from top to bottom. So the first thing you're gonna see me do is I'm gonna strike each of my hinges either at the top of the hinge or at the bottom of the hinge, because my goal is to break the machine screws. They're actually sitting inside the door. So in a door, both on the frame side, or excuse me, on the jamb side and on the door side, inside that door is either a 3/16 or a 1/4 inch steel strap running top to bottom. And those steel straps have machined holes in them for these machine screws. And so if you look at a typical commercial hinge, there's usually about at least 5 machine screws. So when we're striking this, what we're actually doing is we're breaking some of those machine screws. So we're not fighting all 10 of them, or however many is in that particular hinge. We're just fighting as many as we have to. It also will help cam the hinge. So if I strike the bottom of the hinge, right, it'll help cam the front out, which will help me introduce my fork as I go into it. So for my top hinge, because I'm gonna have to introduce my fork from the bottom, I'm gonna hit the top of that hinge. Now my middle hinge, because I'm gonna introduce the fork from the top, which will give me more leverage, I'm gonna hit the bottom of the hinge. And the same thing with the lowest one is I'm gonna hit the bottom of this hinge. So for me, it's always high, low, low, and that should prep my hinges. Now, some hinges on a real door might require you to hit them a couple times. Don't go after it. Don't hesitate to really give them a big hit. This is a prop, we're gonna give it a good hit, but we're not gonna sit here and try and hit it so hard we break a bunch of stuff. Because you will break the dowels if you drive them hard enough. So again, always safety glasses, gloves. Got my Halligan and my axe, which is the 2 things I'm gonna need for this evolution. You can do this 1 or 2 person. You can have an axe person working with you, or you can just go ahead and do the single person. So I'm gonna demonstrate a single person evolution. Okay, so again, striking high, low, and low. So I got a good cam out of that one, that's good. Now I'm gonna go low and low. All right. So again, like I said, my top hinge is going to be my most difficult hinge. So that is the first one I'm going after. So take my Halligan, I'm gonna slide it up under that hinge, and if I get a good enough bite, or if I'm concerned about my bite, I'm gonna take my axe, tuck it under my armpit, give it a couple of taps, get it set in there nice and deep. Okay? Once I've got that set in place, now I can start to work on giving it a pull. Now you'll notice my hands. I typically put my hand around this because if I'm pulling hard enough, I don't want to pull this thing up into my chin and whack myself, right? Of course, I'd be wearing a helmet and all my other gear. But since I'm just doing training, I don't have to do that today. All right, so bottom one came out, top one's still in there. And you can continue to try and pull from here, but a lot of times that's what's gonna happen because of the angle. So just take your tool, rotate it over, and reintroduce it. It'll sit on the bill there a little bit too, but it'll get nice and deep. Again, give it a little love. All right, so hinge is out. Hey guys, so before you start pulling the hinges, don't do what I just did and leave the bolts in it, because pulling the hinges becomes way harder. So make sure you see this bolt right here, right? So that's the bolt we use to clamp the cuttable hinges, our disposable hinges, into the prop. But when you're pulling the hinges, make sure you take your 3/4 inch Makita and at least make sure they're out. So when you look through here on the prop, you see none of that bolt sticking through. And that will help make your pulling of your hinges much easier than if you're fighting the actual hinge also. When we do this, remember we struck the top hinge, the top of the top hinge, bottom of the middle hinge, bottom of the lower hinge. The way I pull this is I pull top, and then I actually go straight to bottom because I want this hinge to hold the door in place. So now I can just take my Halligan, set it across that hinge, and you'll actually see some videos of guys actually just driving, taking their axe and their Halligan and just basically going to town. And that's a really good technique. On a real structure, there's no reason you can't just drive that Halligan right through there. On the prop, we don't recommend that. We do recommend you practice pulling them, but in real life, there's some other options too. One other option I do want to make sure I go over that we shouldn't do on the prop, but you should absolutely do it in real life. So once the tool is in place and you're ready to start pulling down, one of the things to do before that is actually to take the Halligan and pull it side to side. This will help rip and displace those bolts, which will help that hinge come out easier. Now on our prop, we can't pull side to side because all we're gonna do is bend our hinges, right? We're gonna just tear up our prop. We don't wanna do that, but we do want to, when we go to an evolution, remember, hey, I'm gonna pull this side to side and try and get that door, that jam in that door to kind of give up even more space and even more, create some more breakage of those machine screws. So again, I've gone ahead, got my Halligan in place, I've hit it with my axe, and so now it's in place, ready to pull this hinge. And so you see it's a little bit easier on the down because you got a lot more leverage. Kind of hold that in there. Again, if it gets to a point where the tool's sliding, just flip it over. That'll give you a better bite. And out the hinge comes. All right, now my middle hinge, same as my top, right? Now I'm gonna set it in here. Now here's a little quick tip. It's kind of hard to hit way up here, right? And in our video that we're doing on Halligans, one of the things that we're gonna talk about is shouldering the Halligan. And when we mean shouldering it, we mean here at the fork, there's a flat edge that allows us to take our axe and slide down the Halligan and catch the edge of that fork. And now you can see how that's becoming my striking surface versus having to get up on top here and trying to strike here where I have less power, okay? And depending on the height of your ceiling, you may not have a lot of room to work up there. So again, just a nice way to get the tool set in place. So we're gonna pop that first one. That one went way easier. Okay, again, we're getting, part of this is gonna be slippage from the fact that we're on metal with a bunch of powder coat, which is fine. Let's see if we can get all the way with that. There we go. Again, I can flip it over, pop it out. And now it comes to the middle hinge. So now the door's been released. Now remember, In real life, that doesn't mean the door is either gonna fall out, it may not do anything. You just pull the hinges. That door may need to still be forced. And some doors, on their hinge side, they actually have a kind of basically, it's a finger bolt, for lack of better words, or a floating bolt, that as the door closes, that bolt goes into the hinge. So be prepared once you've done this to go ahead and force it conventionally from the hinge side to pull the door out. All right, now go out there and breach some doors.